In this primary election, you will issue a voter's ballot based on their language preference and party preference. You will find these preferences listed in the roster. Match the abbreviation in the roster to the abbreviation on the ballot. If a voter does not have a language preference, you will inform them that the ballot is bilingual and issue an English-Chinese ballot unless they prefer a ballot with Spanish or Filipino. If a voter does not have a party preference, show them the ballot information sign and ask them to pick a ballot option. Let's look at some examples. Standard voter, language, and party preference noted in roster. As voter approaches the table, the roster clerk references their job card and welcomes the voter.
Hello. Hi. May I have your name and address?
Jane Smith, 123 Polk Street.
Okay.
Roster clerk looks for voter name in all pages of the roster. Clerk confirms voter name and address.
Jane Smith, 123 Polk Street?
Correct.
Perfect.
Roster clerk checks for language preference in the roster. Roster clerk sees an FI in the roster's language column, indicating that the voter wants a Filipino language ballot. Roster clerk then checks for party preference in the roster. Roster clerk sees DEM next to a bubble in the roster's ballot column, indicating that the voter wants a Democratic Party ballot, and fills in the bubble.
Gusto niyo ba ako magsalita ng Ingles o Filipino?
English, please.
Okay.
Roster clerk shows ballot clerk voter's preference.
Okay. Could you please sign here?
The roster clerk turns the roster to the voter and asks the voter to sign on the signature line.
Thank you very much.
Roster clerk finds voter in street index by using the cross-reference number from the roster. Roster clerk crosses off number on street index. The roster clerk hands the voter a blue ballot secrecy folder.
Okay, so here is the blue ballot secrecy folder, and Karen will help you over here.
I will issue your ballot. Let me just see what your party preference is. Okay.
Ballot cards are in a set on a pad in order. Card 1, Card 2, each bilingual party ballot has a separate pad. The pads are separated into 3 boxes by language, and within each box, pads are distinct by party. Remember to flip up the dividers when setting up the election table, so the proper ballot pad will be easy to find. The ballot clerk removes the ballot cards and the voter receipts from the Filipino language Democratic DEM ballot pad and hands them to the voter.
The ballot contains 3 cards. Please check both sides of the cards for contests. There you go. Put that in. And then here are your receipts for your ballot. And here is a pen. Please return the pen after voting.
Standard voter, no language or party preference.
Hi, I'm here to vote.
Hello. May I have your name and address?
Sure. Ben Jones, 567 Hay Street.
Okay.
Roster clerk looks for voter name in all pages of the roster and reads back voter's name and address.
Here we go. Ben Jones, 567 Hay Street?
That's correct.
The roster clerk looks under the language preference column. The roster clerk sees that there is no language preference noted for this voter. The roster clerk points to the ballot information sign.
You will receive an English-Chinese ballot unless you prefer a Spanish or Filipino version.
English-Chinese is fine.
Okay.
The roster clerk looks in the ballot column of the roster on the voter's line and notices 4 bubbles. This means the voter registered as no party preference and has 4 ballot options. The roster clerk points to section B of the ballot information sign.
So the roster shows you are registered as a no party preference. Please tell me which of these 4 ballot options you would like.
Option 2, please.
Okay, great.
The roster clerk fills in the bubble by the voter's ballot choice and asks voter to sign on the signature line.
Okay, please sign here. Thank you.
Roster clerk crosses off number on street index. The roster clerk hands the voter a blue ballot secrecy folder.
All right. Here is your ballot secrecy folder. And Karen here will help you.
Hello,
Hi,
I
Karen.
will issue your ballot. Okay, you will get the no party preference American Independent ballot. Let me get
The ballot clerk goes to the English-Chinese box, looks through the pad until finding the no party preference American Independent ballot pad, N-AI, then tears out the ballot cards and the voter receipts and hands them to the voter.
So those are your ballots, and this is your receipts for your ballot cards. And please return this pen when you've finished voting.
Sure, thanks very much.
Thanks for voting.
Standard voter, no language or party preference noted. Once Filipino language ballot.
Maria Vargas, 600
Yes.
Mission.
Yes.
The roster clerk looks under the language preference column. The roster clerk sees that there is no language preference noted for this voter. The roster clerk points to the ballot information sign.
You will receive an English or Chinese ballot unless you prefer Spanish or Filipino.
Filipino, please.
Okay. Gusto niyo ba ako magsalita ng Filipino o Ingles?
Filipino.
Roster clerk offers voter the language preference form so that the voter's preferred language can be updated for future elections.
Kung gusto ninyo, pwede kayo mag-fill up ng language preference form para sa susunod na eleksyon. Alam namin kung ano ang gusto niyong lengguwahe. Salamat.
Roster clerk puts a completed language preference form at the back of the roster. The roster clerk looks in the ballot column of the roster on the voters line and notices 4 bubbles. This means the voter registered as no party preference and has 4 ballot options. The roster clerk points to section B of the ballot information sign.
So Maria, nakarehistro ka bilang NPP o walang kinakatikang partido. So merong 4 na opsyon kang pagpipilian. Anong opsyon ang gusto mo?
Walang partido.
Okay.
The roster clerk fills in the bubble by the voter's ballot choice and asks voter to sign on the signature line.
All right. So pakipirmahan na lang ito. Salamat. Okay, itong inyong asul na secrecy folder.
While the voter was with the roster clerk, the ballot clerk was getting the Filipino language box and finding the NPP ballot. The ballot clerk removes the 3 ballot cards and the 3 voter receipts from the English-Filipino language no party preference ballot pad and hands them to the voter.
Please check both of the sides of the cards for contest.
Paki-check na lang ang both sides ng cards para sa mga content.
And here are your receipts.
Ayan ang resibo.
And please return this pen after voting.
Pakibalik ang pen pagkatapos bumoto.
Salamat.
Thank you.
The ballot clerk files the pad back in the correct spot for future use.